Hi, my name is Tony.
And I'm Chris.
And we love pop culture. We often find ourselves discussing film, music, literature, and more, going down the rabbit hole of how everything is connected. We want to share those moments in pop culture that are seemingly unrelated, but connected by just a few links. Welcome to the Pop Culture Connection. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the Pop Culture Connection horror movie special. During the Halloween season, we wanted to take a break from our usual way of doing things, where we take two seemingly different people or events in pop culture and explore the links that connect them. If you were with us last week, you may remember that we spent that first episode talking about The Exorcist, its impact on pop culture, its impact on us, and the family connection that it has to a very different horror film, The Lost Boys. So we're picking up from there. In part 2, we'll be discussing one of the stars of The Lost Boys, his connection to another scary movie, a legendary horror author, directors acknowledging each other's work, and a slasher team-up that never got made. So we hope you enjoy it.
It began in May, and every month after that, whenever the moon was full, it happened again. And again.
What was that? It's over there. Don't point that at me.
Nobody knew who or what was responsible.
Come on.
They only knew it had to be stopped.
So I know you mentioned earlier, we talked about Kiefer Sutherland, Jason Patric was Michael. You got Corey Feldman and the other Frog Brother, who I don't remember.
That other guy.
The other guy
was
was
cool.
the Frog Brother. But Corey Haim, he fought some vampires when he was young, but he also fought a werewolf in Silver Bullet. And
He was well versed in the fighting of the classic mythical creatures.
Only he had fought Frankenstein's monster and the
Monster
creature from
Squad.
the Black Lagoon and the mummy.
But he knew about it. Those guys in the Monster Squad, they lived just a couple streets away. So they were sharing information.
Yeah, they would know. Corey Haim, we talked about just, I think the Coreys, Feldman and Haim get a lot of jokes about they were just the Coreys to be in a film, but they were both great child actors at the time.
Yeah, nothing funny about that.
And Silver Bullet, again, 1985. Obviously I didn't see it right away, but
Eventually
stumble
across it.
It's not a top tier one, but when you start kind of going down the rabbit hole of horror, getting into werewolf stuff,
as you do, we all
everyone
reach a point
falls into the lycanthrope hole
where we get into werewolf stuff.
You want a silver bullet, huh?
The man Uncle Red had gone to see was more than a gunsmith. He was, Uncle Red said, an old-world craftsman, a sort of wizard of weapons. He confirmed the high-grade silver content of my crucifix and Marty's medallion, melted them down, and molded them into a silver bullet.
And that one, that is a fun movie. It's the scariest part is Garrett Busey, obviously,
as it usually is.
And but it is a fun little werewolf film. I love a good werewolf movie, and not the best, but
yes,
good.
Christian Slater, thank you.
Okay, he was just doing Jack Nicholson. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
pretty
it doesn't
much.
matter. Silver Bullet is a fun one. It's based on a Stephen King novella.
Didn't we do that for one of the horror movie marathons?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, in the past when we've done horror movie marathons, I think we connected this and Silver Bullet and People Under the Stairs because it shared an actor.
That was it.
Between the two. If you know who that is, let us know. See if you can tell us
Win
who
the
that is.
$5 Olive Garden gift card.
And we will give you 100% off a $5 Olive Garden gift card.
Gotcha!
Prove it.
But the Stephen King novella, really interesting take on Stephen King called Cycle of the Werewolf. It's almost like a graphic novel, and goes through, every chapter is 1 month in a year during the full moon of when the werewolf appears. And something about Stephen King that I love is that he would try different things with how the style of how he released his work.
Certainly, yeah. He was a purveyor of different, bringing on newer technology or modern techniques to push the genre forward. I mean, he was famously one of the early adopters of the Mac and word processing.
And he would do things like do a series over the course, releasing a chapter a month over the course of a year. And you could get something like The Green Mile, which turned into, ended up being not a horror movie, much like Shawshank Redemption, one of his few non-scary things. But
a wonderful story nonetheless.
Yeah, he's innovative. He's still innovative and can weave a story. And, along with Shawshank, Green Mile, Stand By Me, I don't think Silver Bullet is really remembered as a Stephen King story.
I think that's Gary Busey's fault as well.
Everything's Gary Busey's fault.
It probably is.
Straight jacket. If you put that straight jacket on me, I'm going to pull your endocrine system out of your body.
Hey,
and make a hat out of it.
what's going on?
But that, that's all right. I think he would admit to that anyway. We don't even, you can't even say enough about Stephen King, his contribution to modern horror.
You just stand in awe. You just go,
he's the king. And, he did collaborations with other people. He found the people he connected with. We had talked about George Romero. Stephen King did a lot to collaborate with other horror icons. He had connected on Creepshow with George Romero. Just a reminder, we had talked about in the last episode the George A. Romero Foundation. If you go to georgearomerofoundation.org, they are a great group who helps to provide fellowships and scholarships to independent filmmakers and also preserve the works of George Romero. Again, a godfather of horror, especially the modern zombie genre. Creepshow was a collaboration between those two. They found a kinship and loving the old EC Tales from the Crypt comics and put together a film that made you feel like you were reading one of those old comic books of several short stories all together in one. And a great, there's some comedy to it. It's not super scary, but it's a good
tongue-in-cheek
80s fun, creepy movie.
Yeah, and if you like anthology horror, it's a must-watch. They do a great job of making it feel with the animation of this is a comic book. Classic anthology style. There's an overarching story that's corny to a degree that makes it fun if you can vibe with that sort of thing, which we do.
Yeah, it's definitely good. And the sequel's the same way. Creepshow 2 has the same elements to it. They tried to do the third one, but it didn't fit really well into it. There's a series on Shudder right now, a Creepshow, that feels more like a true sequel.
Have you watched those?
I've watched a few of them, and it does feel like a, the showrunner is Greg Nicotero, who, he's worked on The Walking Dead, he's been a director and actor, but he started off as a special effects artist in, especially like Sam Raimi movies, and got a chance to meet him years back when I went to some Walking Dead event here. Just super cool, great guy. But he understandably, being at that time, being in the industry and studying under some of the guys who worked at Creepshow, like Tom Savini, was a big fan of that movie and of those old EC Tales from the Crypt books and things like that, which Tales from the Crypt is its own subject that we can go off on at some later point as a TV series.
But yeah, the movie is just great in and of itself. You get to see King's made a lot of cameos and appearances and things, but as the lead and only actor in an entire segment of the film, he does a great job.
Yeah, that's a great segment of him. Very believable country bumpkin who's just got that
kind of natural inbred look about him kind of lends to the character.
Yeah, it works on a couple levels. And you get father zombies getting revenge, a meteorite plant shit taking over. You get
here's the gist. If a meteorite falls near you, don't touch it. Especially if it's still smoking and steaming and glowing.
Right.
Pulsating with light. Just stay away from it. Come back in a couple days when it's cooled off and see what happens.
Same thing. If you have a terrible wife, don't feed her to a thing in a crate that is found under the stairs.
Yes, don't let Steve Buscemi summon a mummy with Christian Slater.
That was Tales from the Dark Side.
We're jumping movies, but still good advice.
That is still good advice. But that is still considered the true Creepshow 3 because it does have collaboration from Romero and Stephen King in it, whereas the real Creepshow 3 is shit. And lastly, if you don't like cockroaches, I guess you're fucked.
Then don't.
like them. But bad things are going to happen no matter what.
But if you do like Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson,
hold your breath for a long time.
This is a very fun look at them in their kind of... Well, Leslie Nielsen's obviously on his early career, but he was still becoming the Leslie Nielsen as we know him. And I think this film is a great example of why he is that. Such an iconic actor.
Yeah, you can, there's Frank Drebin and Airplane and Dracula Dead Loving It. And obviously he was a good satire actor, but he played a pretty good bad guy.
In a fun and kind of hilarious way.
So yeah, just like with any other anthology series or Twilight Zone or Friday the 13th the series or anything like that, don't be an asshole.
Right.
It should just be called Nice Try, Asshole.
The lesson to be learned.
Be good to other people or you get a comeuppance in a gruesome way.
Or even you just might anyway, even if you are good to people.
I can hold my breath for a long time.
But Stephen King, like we were talking about, contribution to Creepshow. was also one of the reasons that Evil Dead, the original 1981 Evil Dead, did as well as it did. Sam Raimi, along with Bruce Campbell and Rob Tappert, they were friends in college, and they wanted to make their own movie. They made Within the Woods as a little short to sell the studios, hey, we can make this horror movie. And they ended up being able to make the original Evil Dead. Obviously, it wasn't a big budget thing at the time. Early 80s, it wasn't what everyone was expecting, and was released in a couple of theaters, and it found its frame, but it was Stephen King's review. He was able to see it, and, the master of horror at the time saying that something was a scary, good movie was enough to blow up recognition of Evil Dead.
Yeah, it's still like this today. Like we were talking, if somebody mentions your name or says what you do is good, that can change everything.
Yeah, that adds to the number of people who want to seek it out. I'm interested in this because I like this thing. I'm going to check out this thing. So, many thanks to Stephen King for bringing attention to Evil Dead. That's another one that I didn't discover, even though it came out, early 80s. I didn't discover into my teen years when I first saw Evil Dead 2. Yeah, I saw the sequel first.
Your parents aren't taking you to see Evil Dead.
Right. As a toddler.
When I was 3.
But it is those like sleepovers at friends' houses where you're allowed to rent whatever movie you want. And, if you're into horror stuff, if your parents are cool with it, they'll let you in. I saw Evil Dead 2 before I saw the first.
Which, in a way,
is Evil Dead.
Isn't it just a remake of like, hey, we can do this better?
The first 15 to 18 minutes are a remake, and then it goes on from there.
Yes, and for as good and groundbreaking and do-it-yourself as Part 1 was, Part 2 just blew the lid off.
And had added in the Three Stooges slapstick type stuff that and made Ash...
Yeah, made Bruce Campbell's career.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
If it just would have been Evil Dead, I don't think he would have.
No, it wouldn't have
been who he was.
But when you see Evil Dead 2 come together as its thing, and then I went back and saw Evil Dead 1, and it is a more straightforward, scary, flat-out horror film, and I'm glad that it ended up the way that it is.
Because then it provided Army of Darkness.
Right. And that whole world that it opened up.
Which is your litmus test for if somebody can hang with you.
Yeah. Army, yes. That is why.
If they don't like Army of Darkness, they're not for you.
That was for a while when I was in my dating world. My test would be watching Army of Darkness together. And if they got it, if they liked it, then they were for me. And if they didn't, I was like, I can't.
This isn't going to work.
This isn't going to work out. If you don't get it, you're not for me. And, think of that as you will.
It's a good litmus test. You know where you stand after watching Army of Darkness.
I think so. It's a very disparate types of people. And I didn't not like them, but we're not going to work out. That's,
not in the cards.
4 of hearts, 8 of spades, 2 of spades, Jack of diamonds, Jack of clubs.
Why have you disturbed our sleep? Awakened us from our ancient slumber. You will die!
And so I am glad that Stephen King did kind of champion the original Evil Dead. Something that you might notice when you're watching it is when they do first go down into the cellar, there is a poster for the 1977 Hills Have Eyes by Wes Craven. that Sam Raimi purposely put in there as like, you think that was scary, well, what about this? And that kind of became a back and forth between Raimi and Wes Craven.
Yes, and certainly a scary film, especially for its time. I mean,
yeah,
pretty much the idea of the, what would you call it? The mutated
nuclear created
mutant desert dwelling biker
Michael Berryman whatever they were in the hills, just like normal families around, we have to eat their parakeet.
A trope that we can't define, but yet you know what it is.
There's nothing like that one, but there's also nothing like Evil Dead. And it was cool to see them kind of like nod and respect each other as kind of one-upsmanship. Yeah, The Hills Have Eyes, again, it's a product of its time, and the remake was made to make money, which is different than made to shock or inspire fear, and you can't replicate that no matter what you do.
No, at that time, Craven was already becoming kind of the elder statesman of the horror genre, even before he made Nightmare on Elm Street, probably his defining piece.
Right.
And
so, you have between that and Last House on the Left, at least in smaller groups, you had people who recognized Wes Craven as someone who was doing something different and more shocking than what was currently being targeted as horror at the time.
Yeah. And it was. It bordered on
snuff.
Some people would call snuff, or they thought it was a little too obscene.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you looking back at it, just that was made by today's standards is shocking. There's some stuff that pales in comparison to what we can show now, and there's other stuff that could never be made.
Yeah, it was a product of its time, I think, more so than other movies. But by the time he was able to get the experience working on those films, by the time he cultivated Nightmare on Elm Street, it all came together. And I think people don't, because of what the franchise became, people don't realize what intense film the original Nightmare on Elm Street was. And you tend to think of Freddy in those films as being a bit comical, and that's definitely what it became. But the first one was not like that at all. It was a true, pure horror movie, and it lived up to its billing.
Yeah, Freddy ended up in the later sequels becoming pretty much Wile E. Coyote and just developing whatever he could to kill people. But in the first film, you can't not dream. You can't not fall asleep. And Nightmare on Elm Street became a seminal, and Freddy Krueger became seminal slasher material. I think it's interesting, and then going back, that while trying to fall asleep, Nancy, the main character, is watching Evil Dead on television.
There's the back and forth. And
Heather Langenkamp, who portrayed Nancy, is one of the three sisters from the sitcom Just the 10 of Us to be in a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Which...
It's pretty good pooling there, right?
Because there was only a handful of Lubbocks that were women.
I guess 2 handfuls.
Well, yeah.
There's 10 of them.
There were Brooke Thies, who also portrayed Debbie in Part 4. She got turned into a cockroach.
The cockroach girl.
And then squashed. And then there was
one of the more
Joanne Willette was on Part 2. She was on the bus. She got the...
Well, what's that?
I'm doing a hand motion. She got the claw through the chest at the end. So, yeah.
I thought you were saying she got the Surf City.
She got the old hand nearby her. So there's an extra connection for you there. Is Just the 10 of Us, which was a spin-off Growing Pains. which has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And then Evil Dead 2 came along, which is kind of what we're talking about. That was what I saw first, and that just kind of like brought me online when I first saw it.
You're like, oh, okay. I think I see how this can go.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know you could do this with
I didn't know
film.
you could do this. I didn't know it could be absurdly scary, absurdly funny, and just absurdly absurd. And
all at once.
Yeah, kind of taking us back to our last episode where we talked about Clue. You know, we used words like madcap and zany, and I think you could attribute those to Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, and that's all Sam Raimi. He knows how to find that central link between all of those things of scary and funny and crazy and madcap, and making them all fit together. There's no one else quite like that. But because Wes Craven had used Evil Dead in Nightmare on Elm Street, Sam Raimi at the same time is like, well, I'm going to throw a little bit back, and I will put a little reference to a Nightmare on Elm Street in Evil Dead 2. And that's why in one of the scenes in the basement, you can see Freddy Krueger's glove hanging from the ceiling when Ash goes down to collect the pages from the Necronomicon.
Mm-hmm.
So a little back and forth, which I do really appreciate, and I love that, though they weren't like competing against each other.
No, and that's what's great about, like I said before, Craven kind of being this, he's established as a filmmaker, and he could just easily say, yeah, it's great that you like my stuff, kid. But here he is supporting an up-and-coming director and saying, yeah, your stuff is good too. And so I'll put your stuff in my movie.
So then you move a few years down the road to 1993. You get Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, which was not the final Friday because he ended up in space and then fighting Freddy Krueger.
And so far as we know, that was the final.
That was, at the time, the final Friday. But recently, I want you notice that not only has the Necronomicon in it, but also the dagger from Evil Dead 2. So kind of like a callback to these are the things that can take out whatever is possessing Jason Voorhees and finally put him to rest.
So yeah, it kind of begs the question, are these two things going on in the same universe? Mm-hmm. Now that we've seen some of this stuff, and we've seen Freddy's glove, we have Jason, we have the callback to Evil Dead. It's like there's all this stuff going on
at the same right.
within the same realm.
And before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there was this like smaller group of movies that happen that, oh, okay, maybe these do all exist. And I think everyone at the time who was either a Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street fan was like, what would happen if Freddy fought Jason? Mm-hmm. Like, who would win in that battle? And
right.
I remember maybe 1989, 1990...
being
talking about that with my friend, reading Fangoria, and them talking about this might be made someday. It took almost 2 decades for them to make a Freddy vs. Jason.
Yeah, when they could have just put it on pay-per-view.
It would have, yeah.
And everybody
it still would have made money. Mm-hmm. But they finally, did put it together, Freddy vs. Jason, at the end of Jason Goes to Hell. Freddy's glove comes up and grabs Jason's mask, pulls him down. That was kind of like the wink to the audience that this might happen. But it didn't happen until, 10 years later. Again, almost 20 years after the first discussion of whether these two should ever meet, brought the two icons together. And
well, that's just Hollywood. I mean, ideally, from a story standpoint, you can make it happen pretty easily. But because of who owns what, the rights, property and the rights, and then
it was then until New Line acquired the rights to Jason Voorhees as a character that they could actually do it. And for the most part, it's not great, but I like how they set it up, that no one was afraid of Freddy anymore they had erased Freddy Krueger from Springwood, Ohio as a thing so that no one even thought about him. He needed to get back from hell because he was trapped. He didn't have enough power. He found the one other being in hell that could kind of take over and tricked it into going to kill for him in his name again, but couldn't stop it. Because once Jason goes on his warpath, there's no stopping it, and then they have to battle each other, both in the dream world and physical world.
I had to search the bowels of hell, but I found someone who'll make 'em remember. He may get the blood, but I'll get the glory, and that fear is my ticket home.
Yeah, I think it's a fun film, but because of 2 decades of hype, it could never live up to its billing.
Right, no matter who you are. I remember going to see it in the theater. I think they should have split theaters into Jason and Freddy fans, but they were all kind of mixed. Didn't really work out. What I thought was cool was in an early draft, one of the possible endings had Freddy and Jason being dragged down to hell, kind of lunging at each other and having chained hooks pull them back, revealing Pinhead, who says something to the effect of, "Now, gentlemen, what seems to be the problem?" And then incorporating Hellraiser's Pinhead into that.
Or even if it was just that, it would have been...
Right. If it just, they wouldn't go from there and you just got, oh shit, now those two are...
Now that brings that whole series
right
into this universe.
I think that it's something that I think they continued on in comics. They also continued Freddy versus Jason versus Ash in the comic books and brought in the Necronomicon. People trying to resurrect Jason and Ash finding out and having to stop both Freddy and Jason from...
Yeah, which we know from Friday the 13th Part 6, you don't do.
You don't want to do.
You don't do it.
I don't think anyone ever learns from those. And then Freddy vs. Jason became kind of the start of the multiverse, bringing, Alien vs. Predator stuff. And that for a time, there was a talk of a Pinhead versus Michael Myers crossover. So, looking into it, I saw that Dave Parker, filmmaker, he went on to do The Dead Hate the Living, The Hills Run Red. He pitched the idea that basically we would see why Michael Myers from Halloween couldn't die. He would have received the puzzle box from the Man in Black from the later Halloween films as a child while trick-or-treating. And he was possessed by the Lord of the Dead, Sam Hain, which is a play on Samhain.
Yeah.
And that would have opened up the meeting between Michael Myers and Pinhead when a group of people tried to destroy the Myers home and find the puzzle box that would summon Pinhead, who would recognize Sam Hain, and they would battle eventually in hell and kind of do a separate. And once they did Freddy vs. Jason, then they could do Myers vs. Pinhead. But it never took off past the planning stage.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad it didn't.
Right.
There is the fanboy in you that does like the Freddy vs. Jason, but at the same time, that seemed to feel a bit more natural, whereas Myers vs. Pinhead would seem kind of, you really have to set that up, and there's a lot of prerequisites.
It's Godzilla vs. Bambi.
Yeah. A lot of stuff just doesn't follow, and it seems maybe that was a bit forced.
Yeah.
And so...
And you can like them both, and, it'd be like Leatherface versus Candyman.
Yeah.
You just have to find some weird way to get them together, and
right.
It's not quite the same. So that is where we were going to leave for now. So far, we've covered The Exorcist, The Lost Boys, Stephen King, Evil Dead, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and a Halloween/Hellraiser crossover that never came to be. In episode 3, we will finish up and talk more about Michael Myers, a horror classic from Alfred Hitchcock, a real-life maniac that inspired a few of the film's biggest villains, and more. So that'll be out next Sunday, which is Halloween, and we do hope to have you there with us. In the meantime, please feel free to find us on Linktree. That's link.tr.ee/the PCCcast, where we have links to all of our social media profiles. We are at the PCCcast@gmail.com, the PCCcast on Twitter, and Instagram and Facebook. You can find us at the Pop Culture Connection. We also added our audiograms to YouTube, and as always, we updated our Spotify playlist to include some music discussed and inspired by these episodes. So until next time, stay connected and stay scared.